Welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health. I am your host, Arick, and today we are joined by the amazing Kimberly Braun, a former nun with over a decade of monastic life. She is a TEDx speaker, theologian, and author of Miracles in the Naked Light. Kimberly, welcome. You're so welcome to our show. On behalf of our listeners and our team members, we welcome you, and it's a pleasure to have you on our show.
It is fantastic to be with you. I feel very blessed to not only be on the show, but also to talk about things so close to my own heart.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. So, Kimberly, let's dive right in. In your experience, how would you define inner peace?
So it's interesting because oftentimes when we look at the word peace, we frame it from saying what it's not,
Yeah.
right? Like freedom from something. But I'd like to just take the two words independently. So inner means your internal state.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the events of your life or the world around you is representing peace to you. So it's not a resource that is outside yourself. And that's why I like having the word inner with peace, because
Yeah.
oftentimes there's the assumption when you say, I am feeling peace, there's an assumption that goes with it that can be a little less juicy. So we're talking about an inward state that has only to do with you alone, period.
Yeah.
It affects the world. It's in relationship with the world. The world is a factor. The environment is a factor. But ultimately,
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about. And peace, peace is, it's considered freedom from disturbance or freedom from tension or freedom from stress. So it's all these things that you're free of that lead to behaviors that are more life draining than life enriching. But even that's kind of complicated, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
When you look at it that way. So
Mhm.
if we were to look at peace in its positive sense, I think probably two words that are strongest for me when I reflect upon peace are tranquility and equanimity.
Okay.
And tranquility has the sense of if you were to look out on a lake and it was completely still.
Hmm.
Tranquility has a sense of stillness to it. So if its inner peace is an inner tranquility, there's a certain stillness, a stillness of the emotions, a stillness of the mind, a
Yeah.
stillness within the body. Like the body's not agitated. The mind isn't going a mile a minute. The heart isn't racing in many directions. And equanimity, which I think has a bit more body to it, robustness in thinking about it. Equanimity is a, a balance and a right relationship with all things. So
Mhm.
it's relational from the place of stillness, not relational to get to the stillness. So that's what I talk about when I think of inner peace. How does that land on you?
What inner peace is for me is such an important topic. And I mean, it's people might say that it's subjective, but I might be wrong. And you have the space to correct me. But I really think that it is not subjective because I believe that peace has a common definition. Peace is something that makes us feel at ease. Peace is something, if I have to put it in simple words, I guess peace is the absence of anxiety. And that's what it is for me. And I mean, like, peace is it's not subjective, but it's so subjective at the same time because what might be peaceful for me might not be peaceful for others. Like, let's say I am a very, very, very extroverted person, and I find peace in being surrounded by my friends. However, there are people who don't like uh being around people. You know what I'm saying? They like and they would rather prefer their alone time more than being around people. So that's what brings them peace. So I guess if we have to look at a common definition of peace, it's not subjective, but what brings peace is, I think, very subjective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense, right? I
Yeah.
would also say that peace is a quality of our essential nature. That when we come home to ourselves, because there is a knowing, you know yourself, so you make choices that support that knowing, that when we come home to ourselves, we experience the sweetness of peace.
Yeah.
And it gives us the spaciousness to make those kinds of discernments. Like when we're in a state of peace and we're not agitated or charged or stressed, we're freer to choose in many directions, and we can choose for our highest good and the highest good of others. So you're being extrovert and choosing uh, the amount of social time that works for you and your temperament comes from a place of spaciousness within that you can make that choice.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great topic.
It is, it is. And what I believe is that people are trying to find, just like you mentioned, like when we come home to our true self, that's where the peace lies. It's not, and I believe in our culture, especially in the Gen Zs, we are trying to find peace in people. We are trying to find peace in things. We are trying to find peace in sex. We are trying to find peace in substances. But we don't realize that peace is something that we are born with. Peace is something that is innate in us. And we often just forget about the fact that they might give us temporary relief, but those things do not themselves bring peace. They might bring temporary peace, but that's why I say, and this is the motto that I live by, that I want to live my life inside out, not outside in. No matter what is happening on the outside, it will not affect what is going on inside, because I know that on the inside I am peaceful and I don't let my external factors decide or determine what is going on or how the inside of me changes.
Yes, absolutely. And there is a way then that as we get to know ourselves, our measuring of this comes internally without judgment. So it can be so easy when we look at ourselves to judge ourselves so quickly. But as we cultivate an inner knowing of who we are and make choices that we live a peaceful life, we then become more subtle in our relationship with ourselves. We notice when we're moving away from peace and we make this subtle adjustment to stay within the peace. It becomes a way in which we can live as well and have guidance.
Hmm. Yeah. So, Kimberly, what will be your takes on the common misconceptions on the idea of peace or peace itself? Because people people have these weird definition of peace. So, we have answered the question, how would you define peace? Now, I want to ask you, how does this definition of what is peace differ from common misconceptions about inner peace?
Sure. I think what I've discovered in my ministry work is one of the biggest misconceptions is that our life will be free of challenges. That somehow, if we come to a state of inner peace, everything around us will be inner peace. And, in a way, I think why this is a misconception, because in a way, there is some truth there. When we are moving from, like you said, always move from the inside out. when we are really in touch with ourselves and rooted in that, there's a freedom that everything is peaceful because of the way we are. But where there is a misconception around that is the kind of assumption that there won't be any challenges in our lives. That we'll simply go through life then and everything will line up the way we hope it lines up. And I think that's a common misconception. Another misconception, I believe, is that we will always feel good. And
Yeah.
even when we are rooted in peace, in that tranquility, we still can go through great periods of grief over loss or perhaps confusion through a change that happens in our life. Like we become capable of holding that peacefully, but peace doesn't mean we won't go through these things.
Mm.
So those are the two big ones.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's amazing to me how some people think what peace is and they walk by that definition, but when it gets too late to realize that it was not peace, they really regret it. And yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, it's just so amazing this concept of peace itself, how it differs from people to people, yet it has a um, common definition. And I really want to ask you this. Many people equate inner peace with a lack of conflict or lack of stress. Do you think that's accurate? And I know that you have answered this question. You have said that peace does not mean that there will be no challenges. But I think it's rather how we respond to that, to those challenges that dictate our peace. So
Right.
how
And
do
yeah,
you
thank you. It's a nice subtle distinction. So how I would differentiate is when we live from a place of inner peace, we are free of being stressed. I think that's
yeah.
true. However, we don't necessarily eliminate stressors.
Mm,
So you can see the difference there, that life has certain stressors, and actually stress in the positive sense is a good thing because it pushes us to growth. It's just that stress is usually at an overwhelming amount in the world today. So inner peace would mean free of being stressed, but not free of having stressors arise in life.
mm, yeah. It's really so what role do challenges and conflicts play in achieving inner peace? Now we have talked about what it actually is and how the common misconceptions can be dealt with. So I want to ask you, how do people make use of the challenges and the conflicts that they face in their lives to achieve inner peace?
Sure. So I would say that um, there are many entry points here to this answer. A few that I think are uh, can be key opportunities is first to consider that any challenge that's happening is happening for our good, and moving away from the wrestling with the challenge and moving to a deeper set of questions and practices that
Yeah.
unearth how the challenge is good for us. That it's showing up in life for the sake of good. That's how it's showing up, for
Yeah.
the sake of good. If we really, really believed that, we'd look at it differently and we'd ask a different question. Oh, how can I then navigate this with grace? Versus how can I get through it, or why is it happening? When we get caught in the why is it happening, we stay on a superficial level that taps the energy that we have to work through the challenge. So That's what I would say is one way. The second is it gives us an opportunity. It's a bit like being a warrior. When a warrior's training, part of the training is doing a duel. Like if you're a warrior that's learning how to use a sword, part of the way you learn is have a sword fight with somebody where you're not going to kill each other, right? You're developing a skillfulness. We can view our various challenges when they're upon us as a little boot camp, helping us refine our skillfulness in being coming from a peaceful place at all times.
Mm,
It can feel easier when everything's going our way to feel that we're getting rooted more and more in peace. It can feel more difficult when the world falls apart or we go through incredible destruction or loss. It can feel more difficult to come from that place of inner peace. And that's then the moment not to run away from the challenge, but to say, I'm meant to be peaceful right in the midst of the storm.
yeah, yeah. Wow, that's really amazing. Thank you, Kimberly, for sharing your valuable insights and wisdom and experiences with us today. Your insights into inner peace are truly inspiring, and I personally have learned a lot. So, thank you so much for sharing them with us.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely.
Yeah. And to all our listeners, I hope this conversation has sparked some reflections and perhaps even a few revelations. Remember, inner peace is a journey, not a destination. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Let's continue this journey together towards better health and inner peace. Until next time, stay peaceful and be well.